Hello there, Pursuing Freedom friends. Thanks for tuning in today. I am your host, Erin Bradley, and you guys get ready, buckle up. I have a show in store for you guys that is unlike any other. I recently got connected to Katrina van Oudheusden, and we met maybe, 2 weeks ago, and it was an opportunity to collaborate with her on a masterclass series of 17 masterclasses in a summit called Create Her Money Revolution, which is going to be coming live on the week of August 25th. But by the time you've heard this, that live experience has already ended. And we're going to be sharing about this summit around building wealth, primarily for women. However, if you are a guy who's listening, you are still going to leave this conversation with basically your mind blown. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you you're about to have your mind blown. And the moment that I met Katrina and learned about not only her backstory, which is super fun and interesting, and the women that are bringing this knowledge to her summit, and the way that I've seen my own wheels start turning on just so much around creating velocity of wealth behind your business, creating something that puts your money to work behind the scenes so that you never have to worry about the ups and downs of your business ever again. And honestly, I couldn't wait to have her on the podcast. And it's only a bummer that we couldn't release it before the summit was live. But good news, if you feel as inspired as I suspect you will at the end of this 30 or 40 minutes we spend together, you can connect with Katrina. You can get access to the summit for basically pennies on the dollar, and you can have your mind blown and your life changed and transformed forever. And if you are a guy listening, you're still going to have your life changed and transformed. And you can also share this with any women that you know that are out there in the entrepreneurial world trying to make an impact and build a sustainable life and business for themselves. So, a little backstory on Katrina. She'll share her backstory coming up as a chef in Walt Disney World, which is super fun. And she goes by Chef Katrina. But she went on to develop something called Create Her Business Method for Women. She's coached and mentored thousands of entrepreneurs over the last 15 years. And the one thing that she kept seeing over and over again was the cycle of burnout and struggle that female entrepreneurs specifically deal with, although males also deal with this too.
They
And
do.
why was the proven training failing women in business? And so she went on to explore how our energetic patterns and flow and physiology impact our business and the effectiveness. And so she went on to create something that is so revolutionary that I just, again, I couldn't wait to have you on. So I'm nerding out already, and we haven't even introduced Katrina. So with no further ado, Katrina, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here with Pursuing Freedom.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me on. I mean, you talk about pursuing freedom, and I know your audience is those that are in the real estate industry. So I'm going to really kind of customize this to you because I love this industry. And I think that there's the space for us as women to really be talking about like the create her money revolution. Because I know real estate agents, a lot of times life goes like this in buying and selling and the business. So we will dive into all of that also in this conversation because I really want you to get a sense of how this can be implemented into your life, whether you're a male or female.
I love it. So, yeah, give us the cliff notes of the backstory of how you came up in Walt Disney, how it's led you to where you are today, and then specifically the framework that you are so passionate about teaching because it's something I've honestly never heard of before
Mm.
meeting you just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so cliff notes of the backstory. I worked for Walt Disney World for 13 years. I was born and raised in California, so I played at Disneyland, but I worked at Disney World, and I will never confuse the two. So one is my playground, one is my work ground. At that time, for those 13 years, I went up through the ranks. I really enjoyed my time, but what I found myself doing as a employee at Disney was I was watching how they were growing their business. I became fascinated by how they got people to continuously spend 50, 60, $70,000 a year coming back to Disney over and over again. And so I started looking at what does that look like? How do they do that? And because my fascination with that was more of where I found myself leaning, I looked around and said, okay, I'm no longer a chef because I wasn't reading the cookbooks, I wasn't reading the next trends, I was reading business. So transition from there, I went from full-time to part-time. In my part-time time at Disney as a chef, I opened up a restaurant for 9 glorious months. Best education ever. I would totally do it again. Being in the whole, all of it, it was the best. Left at, retired as a restaurateur, said I wasn't going to do that. Retired from Disney, looked at my business partner and friends and said, I'm going into the world of entrepreneurship. I have no idea what this is going to look like, but here I go. So I dove into the digital marketing space, spent the last 15 years teaching and training digital marketing to the network marketing industry, small businesses and entrepreneurs. And I've had a ball ever since. So that's the nuts and bolts of where I've kind of gone through. The biggest change for me, Erin, was about 3 years ago. After coaching so many individuals, I struggled with what I was teaching and the methodology that I was teaching around coaching and helping people scale a business. So there's marketing tactics. And as a real estate agent and everybody, we're always talking about, how do I get more publicity? How do I get more visibility? How do I get people to know about me? Right. And so while I loved the strategies behind building marketing, I started to see women over and over again go through this vicious cycle of make money, lose money, make money, lose money. And I helped women get to 7 figures, 6 figures. 2, 3 years later, I'd check in and there'd be no money in the bank. Whether it was by choice, by business, by, whatever it was. And I got really frustrated with this. And I said, maybe it's in my methodology. Maybe the way teaching business needs to get changed, because I also saw a lot of burnout. Anybody experience burnout?
Yes.
Yes, ever? Like
Yes.
you just sit there and you're like, and we think it's normal as human beings that we have burnout. And the reality is it's not. We do it to ourselves because we're not taught any differently. And so what I started looking at is there's the balance. And so I dove into this question. I don't even know if I can say the question here on your podcast. Is it explicit? Because this question might be
It's
offensive
about to
to some
be. It's
people.
about to be explicit.
It's
Yeah.
about to be explicit. So I'm about to say a P word that might offend or shock some of you. Even the guys listening, you might be a little cray cray about this. So I got off a call with my business mentor, a gentleman at the time, still a good business mentor of mine. I was exhausted mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically. I mean, I can't even tell you how exhausted I was, right? And we're talking about what I was going to do with my company at the next level. I was in tears. I then waited a couple months. I hired a business muse. I talked to her about what I wanted to do with business, which was a completely different kind of listening than what the guy was trying to fix it. She was trying to figure out what I really wanted to do. And she asked me one question that no male mentor could ever ask me. Not a single one. You guys, you couldn't, it would never have been allowed. But she asked me a question that sent me on a journey that was what I'm sharing with you guys today, which leads up to the revolution. As I was talking about my business and what I wanted to do and the growth, she goes, have you consulted your Erin's laughing over here. I was offended. I think I looked down because I didn't know what she was asking of that question. Like I never heard it. I was curious. I was appalled, and I was like the word hurt my ears. Right? I was like, "What did you just like? What does that have to do with anything? I'm talking business here, right?" Well, lo and behold, ladies, that question is something you should actually contemplate, even as a real estate agent broker. If you're in a business at any level and you haven't asked yourself that question, ladies, I'm inviting you to ask yourself that question. The reason being is that there is a disconnect for many of us women in business. We've been gifted this incredible education from men on how to build a business. It is their framework, their structure, and they've actually built it around their hormonal cycle. Did you know that men wake up in the morning ready for action? Literally and figuratively speaking, high testosterone, high cortisone, ready to go. 5 a.m. miracle mornings. Who teaches that? The guys. Why? Because that's when they're most productive. Do women experience this? Absolutely. But for generally, it's men. In the afternoon, your testosterone starts to wane. You guys create happy hour. We're going to socialize. I'm going to close deals because everybody's feeling good. Done. In the evening, you get a little romantic. Your estrogen kind of kicks in a little bit. And now you're romantic, dating, all this other stuff. You've literally built the whole world around how you feel. Ladies, that's not us. So Erin asked me to share this with you. So you may not know this, but women, we actually experience an infradian rhythm. Majority of what we're taught is around the circadian rhythm, which we think is our sleep habit. BS. That's the male sleep habit. Female sleep habit, completely different. Some of you are night owls. Some of you are early morning. Some of you wake up in the afternoon and are at full productivity. And a lot of it has to do with the infradian rhythm. I didn't know this word existed until 3 years ago. So if you're hearing it for the first time, don't worry, you're safe. Infradian rhythm for women means that we cycle through 28 to 30 days hormonally. Have since the day we were born. So whether you have a menstrual period or not, you still emotionally, psychologically, physiologically, mentally cycle. You'll feel it once you start becoming aware of it, right? And the reason I know this is because I talk with women that are surgical menopausal, postmenopausal, perimenopausal, all stages, even the teenagers or those that are preteen. I have a couple of women on my team that have younger daughters. She says I can see their cycle before they've actually experienced their period. So it's not something that only happens. It's something that's innately in us as women. So this energy cycle, which I think is really fascinating. So follicular, and if you're not doing a menstrual cycle, if you're not following the infradian rhythm, moon cycle actually syncs really well with most women. That's another area that when I talk with women that want some tangible, moon cycle has the same energetic, and tying into that helps us regulate our bodies internally of that energy. So follicular phase is usually right after your period. This is where your body prepares for life, right? So this is usually the first natural phase. High creativity women, high communication, high like level of thinking, able to connect dots, do really big project creation, right? That happens during this time. Inside of your ovulatory phase, you like to talk. Even my introverts become very communicative in this time period. They're very crystal clear and exact on how they're communicating. And just so you guys know, I'm really excited that Erin picked this day for us to do this because I'm at the start of my follicular phase, which means I'm pretty high right now. So, but that's like high energy. In your luteal phase, when your body starts coming down, usually we see this with full moon to new moon. So if you're looking at that part, so full moon to new moon is what we call luteal and ovulatory phase for women. New moon typically is when women, that's where they consider their blood phase. So that phase right there is you are productive. You're closing things down. You're winding up tasks. You might be finding yourself finishing up projects, but it's not your higher level thinking. You ever get that moment, Erin, when you're doing stuff and you're like, my brain is not working the same way today as it was like last week? Like I can't even get on that same brain wave.
100%.
It's because of this. So because we cycle differently, even when you're selling. So I'm going to give you a little tip, ladies, for all those that are real estates that are selling. Your best time to sell, where you'll actually close more deals and make more money, is during your follicular and ovulatory phase. And it's proven. So I have a lady I just met, Rose. She worked with 5,000 startup companies at Stanford Business School. She tested this amongst women and said women were closing more deals, more sales at higher dollar prices during their follicular and ovulatory phase than they were during their luteal and their menstrual phase. Hands down, millions of dollars more. We're asking and closing at a higher percentage. I don't make this up. Like it is proven. So this is where when we look at how do we structure business, the creator method is really getting back to honoring the female body and how you grow your business, how you deal with money, how you deal with your overall health. And it ties in marketing, it ties in audience, but really it's about getting back to the roots of building a business as a woman. That's really what's important, is that methodology is about saying, yeah, the guys have gifted us amazing education, but I need you to step it back because the language has to change a little bit for us to receive into our creative genius how we want to express what a business looks like.
Okay, this is so fascinating for so many reasons. And I just have to share that you alluded to the Miracle Morning, and I was gifted that book by a buddy of mine, one of my really good buddies, a guy who I love dearly. I was suffering from anxiety for the very first time in my life. My business was booming. I was externally very successful, earning at a high level and closing a lot of volume. And I also had a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. And when my buddy handed me the Miracle Morning and I started reading it, and it talked about waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, first I wanted to slap him because I was like, hang on a second. Like when my toddlers come in and crawl into bed with me, like they're on me, you know what I mean? But I will say I adopted the Miracle Morning anyway, because I was honestly feeling quite desperate at that time in my life. And I did find that starting my day with intention changed my life. But I'm going to follow this up by saying that, and I do endorse having a morning routine. But
Agree.
around 2020, we went on a in 2020, we did a 6-month RV road trip and we homeschooled our kids. And we were in a very small RV. And we went on the road and I realized I had to surrender. I started reading a book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And I realized I have to surrender to these circumstances. Like it's not feasible for me to wake up in this little tiny RV at 5 o'clock in the morning without waking everybody else up. Not to mention there's nowhere to go. I'm in a campground. It's dark outside. Like there's nowhere to go. So I'm going to surrender and I'm going to learn to allow myself to rest. And I started sleeping later than I had in years. I was sleeping until whatever time everybody else woke up, 7:30, 8 o'clock. And then I would get up and I actually felt rested for the first time in a really long time. And then I, let my family know I'm going to pour my coffee and go find somewhere to go do my morning routine. And that was the beginning of what I've been referring to for a long time as the unbecoming stressed and rushed and overwhelmed and overconnected and overcommitted. And we talk about this a lot on this show and inside my community about this truth that the antidote to your depletion is not action. Even though we have been trained since we were in preschool to get up and hurry up. Everything is get up and hurry up, get up and go. And we measure our worth by the level of productivity. So to be still, to give ourselves permission to slow down, to acknowledge where our energy level is, which I have never, until literally meeting you 2 weeks ago, I never even considered it had anything to do with the cyclical aspect. I just know that just last Monday, I just felt really low. I didn't have the energy I needed to show up in the capacity that I had planned for myself. And rather than force myself into execution, which would have fallen flat, gotten low results, I gave myself permission to not do that. And then as a result, when my energy came back, and so did the execution, the outcome of the execution, to your point, has a velocity behind it, an exponential impact.
Yep.
So I just want to share that because I didn't know any of this scientifically. I just sort of have started to acknowledge it within myself. And as I try to teach that to others, I feel like there's resistance. So let's go a little bit further into like, how did you, as a high achiever, top performer, strategist, business owner, like, how did you take this guidance and start to integrate it into your life? And I assume it's led to the extraordinary, but talk us through your own like process of receiving this and then starting to behave differently in those cyclical waves.
I think the first thing is that it forced an awareness. Because one of the things with that question being asked to me by that business muse, I realized that everything I had learned was up here in my head. So I was very analytical. I could process and do everything up in my head, but what I recognized is I was dead from the neck down. Like I really was disassociated with being a female, and really what did that mean? Because in the world of business and in the world of what we've been living in, even in the world of real estate, it's still very much a male kind of structured format that we're following. Hit those numbers, hit these deadlines. And that's, you talk about the productivity. Well, men do view life through productivity, but women view life through experience. And then when you have children, you experience it through your children's eyes. And so it's the experience, and we got kind of shut off from that. So in answer to the question, my journey has been ongoing, to be honest. Like it wasn't that I automatically recognized this because I had been so shut down from the neck down. I had to cry. There was actually 2020, getting into 2020. This is where we just kind of first started this evolution. Actually, it was 2023. So 2023, I woke up, I went to sleep I went to sleep on New Year's Eve. I woke up on a New Year's Day in a sad state. That's the only way I can describe it. I was emotionally sad, like I could cry all day sad kind of a thing. Something I would never have let myself experience before because that's wrong, that's shameful, that's lowering, that's whatever. But it was actually a day to grieve for myself. And I got to grieve everything I've done in my past. Right. And there was I kid you not, I think I scared my roommate because she didn't know what to do with me because all I did was want to curl up on the couch with a blanket and cry. And I was crying for nothing. Like I couldn't even explain it. I was like sitting down, I was just calling my family up and saying I'm sad. And they didn't understand what I was saying. But for me, it was like I was sad. I was sad about how disconnected I was. I was sad about how I'd given up so much of my life to please other people. And I didn't understand that. So that is kind of like a weird place to be inside of this conversation. But that was my process of rebirth. That's when I became aware of the body that I have. And I became aware of the male and the masculine side. So for those of you who don't know, you have a male and masculine side of your body. So left side is feminine, right side is masculine. Erin, have you ever experienced like tingling when somebody says something and you kind of get like tingles through
Oh
the body?
yes, all the time.
Do you get full body or do you get like one side or the other? Do you even recognize that?
I have no idea.
So check yourself for this. So if somebody says something, there are times when somebody says something and it tingles left side, which means my feminine energy resonates with that. And there'll be times when something will say something in my right side, which will be the masculine kind of go, oh, that's interesting. And then there'll be a few times where it's a whole body where it makes sense. It's a synergy of what's being said in that conversation. Um, I wasn't paying attention to it until I started making myself aware of it. That, and then as a business builder, so I build courses, I built the summit, I wrote a planner, I've done a lot of things. I started doing it in my energetic phase. I built a planner in 30 days because high energy had me create the planner, contact all the people to get it done. Low energy, I was in production. It was being printed for me. So when you look at how you go through your energy, you can actually craft, create, and finish a project in 30 days, faster than any other time, right? I started looking at what am I doing in my business? Where am I creating my marketing? Where am I looking at my money? Where am I closing more sales? Where do I need those tasks to be? But then where do I need to just sit in here and write a blog post or check on my emails or do something like that? Or maybe just, get my podcast up and all the marketing material that I created earlier. Now I'm just scheduling it out with my team. So there were different tasks that started to happen. So I wouldn't say it's overnight. Honestly, it's been the last 2 years because I've had to become personally aware and recognize my energy because I've pushed through, Erin, so much. I pushed through everything in my 20s. I pushed through everything in my 30s. Like it wasn't okay to be tired. It wasn't okay to rest. But now I've actually started blocking my calendars during my menstrual phase. Don't contact me, right? You can't get on my calendar because it doesn't serve me to be on that call with you. That's my downtime. And for those that are following the new moon phase, the 2 to 3 days before a new moon, block the day before, day after, and a new moon day. Make that your ovulatory cycle, right? Or yeah, your menstrual cycle. Let that be your downtime to reset because women desperately need the reset. If we don't refill our cup, we're absolutely of no use. But we've been taught that productivity that you're talking about, Erin. So we don't have a sense of stopping. But when women stop, men stop. And there's a synergy between that because the men can't keep going either. They do hit burnout. But if they don't have somebody to model or balance against, if they don't see women stop because they feel like they're, men are pushing, women are pushing, one of us has got to receive. We can't both force forward. One of us has got to step back so the other person can be comfortable enough to step back. We move forward together and we move back together, but we can't both be doing the same thing at the same time.
When you talked about, pushing through in your 20s and 30s, and I've read some things around sort of the phases of our life. And I was actually having this conversation yesterday with another guy that was on my podcast about, I think there's some resistance around, is it feasible to learn to design a business, a life in alignment with you, your soul, in this case, cycles, but also just, all of the things. Is it feasible to imagine that younger folks could learn this and apply it sooner before they have given up decades of sort of sacrifice and misalignment before they're willing to give themselves permission? And I'm sure a lot of people listening are already in their 40s or above, but if someone's listening and they're just launching and they're late 20s, early 30s, and they've got all the energy in the world to just like hustle and grind and go for it, and they're hearing this and you're giving them permission to have times of reset and restore and rejuvenate and rest, is this something that younger women and young men can hear and can embody sooner? Do you think this is a possibility?
It is, because I've already met women. There's a foundation here in Tampa, and it is called the it's all about it's Empower Herment. And the one thing that they were looking, I was talking to a 20-year-old, and she's like, I want to know how to sync my cycle with my business. So they're already curious. There is this conversation with these early 20s year olds that are starting to hear this, because we're bringing it up in conversation, and now we're bringing it to our daughters and our children, right? And it's the reason I will say this is that this is really relatively new. Within the past like 5 to 10 years, have the woman's body been researched at the extent that I'm now learning this? It didn't exist for either one of us, Erin, growing up. Like, this wasn't a conversation. There was no female researching the female body and the how our brains work differently than men. And we have a fear suppression that men don't have. So we have this ability to jump off a cliff and take better risks because we don't see the risk the same way. And so I think for the women, my request is that you do embrace this. And I say, because you're going to set the tone that we've never experienced in our generation, my generation, of not having to push through everything. And we're not going to sit there and go, oh, what phase of your cycle are you in? But what we're going to learn to do is block time in our calendar, have the ability to ask for time off as entrepreneurs, really redefine what a business will look like. And I think that's where that creativity comes in, that I'm really excited to see what evolves. And I think as a world of business, the industries of real estate need to evolve. The industries of finances need to evolve. So everything is in an evolution. And I think in this conversation as women, this is a beautiful place to help with that evolution, because otherwise it's just going to be the same old, and everyone's unanimously, men, women, everybody says, this sucks. Like, it's broken. We need to fix it. Ladies, it's really going to take us coming in, not as us only, but in a collective of arm holding and working within and complementing what's out there and saying, okay, how do we work together to solve this problem?
Awesome. And so that leads me to my next question as it relates to how you've brought together these 17 women in your Create Her Money Revolution. And there's a piece of me that has this sort of curiosity in the background, because I know a lot of the topics, I know a lot of the speakers. I also know that when it releases next week, as we're recording this, that I am going to be overwhelmed with learning new information, and all of that is wonderful. And I can't wait to learn it and integrate it into my own financial planning. And there's a question mark lingering in the back of my heart or my mind around, as these women are showing up with their strategies and their achievements and their just impressive, accomplishments and everything else, is this topic of, I don't want to call it self-care, but awareness, right? Awareness and integration going to weave into how we implement these strategies, because there's so much around like that hustle and that sacrifice and the abandonment of ourself in the chase of the external success that is so deep and meaningful. And it's like we're about to drink from a fire hose on systems and strategies and techniques. Like, how do we stay in alignment? How do we keep it all integrating with one another?
When we talk wealth and finance, it seems very like product oriented, like it seems task oriented. It's like a bunch of to-do stuff. The one thing I will say is that there's a very strategic balance to the summit. So having you on here to really talk about that mindset, what's going to transform in your life, and being prepared for like setting the stage for this next evolution of yourself. And so it starts with you. And I love what you shared in your masterclass, because it's critical, because you're going to drink from a fire hose. But the idea is if you picked up a book and you read, and it was a book of a bunch of short stories, you're going to find your few favorites inside of that book. That's how I want you to approach this summit. There's going to be a lot of stories in here. And trust me, these women aren't all success out the gate. They're going to talk about their failures too. This wasn't something they just, highly successful from the moment they stepped in. No, they screwed up a lot. So first off, give yourself grace as you learn this and implement it. This is not one strategy fits all. That's why inside of this summit, there is both the conversation around, as a business owner, do you know where your money is right now? Can you tell me exactly right now what's in your profit account? Can you tell me right now what's exactly in your owner's comp account? Can you tell me exactly right now how much your business is costing you every day? If you cannot define that as a business owner, even as a real estate agent, you're making money in. So how do you control that? So the first conversation I said needed to be part of the summit was the profit first. How to pay yourself first. Women, I know you. I've met you. I've talked to thousands of you. You're the last one to pay yourself, and you always underpay yourself. For the love of all that's holy. You want to talk about an evolutionary change that's got to start somewhere? You first. I got to get you paying yourself first. So profit first is really understanding how cash moves in a business. Missing education, number one. Yes, we can watch Robert Kiyosaki's Cash Flow. Yes, I can read all these books by all these incredible men. End of the day, you've got to know your numbers. That's before you can even step into any of these strategies. So know where you're at financially. You've got to do a self-evaluation. If it's going to hurt, you're going to cry through it, do it anyways. It's going to be the most therapeutic things, because numbers just tell a story. It's just a story. It's just a story that you can change today. Okay. The next piece is, I have a lot of women in business that are using shopping carts or merchant accounts to accept money. Does your merchant account cover or make sure that you're not losing money? I see a lot of businesses out there that are actually losing money in the transaction process. Not okay with that. So the summit is about your mindset, how you deal with the money, and the cash. The next pieces of this, Erin, this is about, there's ways to get to zero in taxes. Would you like to know how to get down to zero taxes? Would you like to know how to build legacy money through an infinite banking? So in infinite banking, it wraps around something called the whole life policy. A whole life policy on its own sucks. I got an insurance agent in here that will tell you that. She's on the summit. She says, this is stupid. Don't do this. The strategy behind it is what makes it a great tool. So I'm getting you to think outside the box around infinite banking. How many of you here have come from the corporate world that might have a 401k, a retirement plan, a pension, something, right? And we're waiting for it to retire because we can't take it out because we're going to get taxed on it. What if you could self-direct? What if you could make choices that actually grew that money so it didn't just sit there in the stock market? Would that interest you? Did you know, as an entrepreneur, there's something called a self-directed solo 401k that's actually better than a 401k in the corporate space, that allows you to put more money in? That's completely up to you, right? So the idea behind this, Erin, is that there's a lot of ways: stock market, real estates, trusts, crypto, how to raise capital for a business, how to talk to your kids about money. So the journey here is to give you a bigger picture and let you understand the tools. Just as if you're in real estate, you've got to start speaking the language, the underwriter, the brokerage. There's a very specific language. Do you not, Erin?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, what are some of the words that a common person would not know that's spoken in your world?
DTI, LTV, cash to close. On and on we could go.
So you have this whole secret language that the person buying the house or selling the house doesn't know. And they may never know. But so did you know there's a secret language around wealth building? That secret is really what the summit, the Create Her Money Revolution, is about. I want you to learn the secret language that the wealthy use, not the rich, but the wealthy use. And in understanding that language, you begin your education.
I've got one more question for you because I want to respect your time. But what if this conversation is triggering for someone who heard you start with profit first, and perhaps they're feeling a little stuck financially right now? The real estate market has been harder than it's been in a long time, the last few years. And there's plenty of people that are thriving, and there's others that have seen decline in their revenue and things like this. So I want to encourage those, and I'd love to hear from you, but I want to encourage those who are maybe feeling triggered by this conversation to come anyway, to not wait, to not think that you need to earn the right to have the knowledge. Just curious about your thoughts on that.
So the thing is so we talked about even like the infradian rhythm. It's the awareness. The first thing you gotta do is become physically bodily aware of what you're doing. And it's not gonna happen overnight. So if you want to learn how your body works as a female, it's gonna take you 3 to 6 months because you've never experienced your body before. This is just an awareness. And the first thing around this is that, yeah, this market right now as a real estate agent is not, and I hear it, trust me, I've been networking, I've heard it everywhere. What would life look like? I'm going to throw this question back to the audience. If knowing what you're about to learn could transform your life in the next 5 to 10 years. So no matter what the market is doing today, if you could lay down the foundation to transform everything moving forward, because the market may shift, something may move for you, but with the knowledge you now have, the understanding of how wealth is built, and you were then prepared when the market shifted to take full advantage of it and then have every tool that you needed at your disposal whenever you needed it, what would your life then look like? Because you can either live in the fear of where you are now, but here's one thing I will tell you, and I think Erin will say this too. Your present does not define your future. Your present self, whatever you're dealing with right now, is a time and space and a moment. This information, some of it has been around for hundreds of years, but it's the whispers behind closed doors. And these women said, no, we need to start having conversations around wealth building. So if you're triggered by it, just like I was triggered by that P word earlier, that's where I invite you to get curious. If it upsets you, there is something inside of you that feels pulled to hear this. That is the reason enough to discover what's behind and what is in this summit, in this revolution that you are going to need to hear.
100%. And it's funny because I was on a show one time and they were asking a question around, like, what do you do when you feel low, when you feel stuck, or imposter syndrome or insecurity or any of these things that we as human beings experience? It's part of our journey. It is what it is. It's not to be judged, but it's to be curious about. And I said to her, the first thing I do is get curious because I'm aware of it. And the second thing is take that curiosity and try to go learn something from someone who is doing it or who has been there. So in other words, get in the room with people that remind me of my future is what I always say. And it's the fastest path to transformation. And if it was triggering for someone to hear this conversation, then chances are it's because of some kind of insecurity there. And the truth of the matter is that nothing about anyone that we admire that's doing the things that we desire in our life and business is necessarily special or unique. They were just willing to be curious enough to learn. And now they're willing to share it with us. And for practically nothing, which is incredible. I honestly can't believe that it's practically free. So I really want to encourage everybody listening. And if you are a guy and you've listened this long, then good on you. And there's probably a woman in your life that needs to hear this. So please share this episode with a female that you care about. And then for all the ladies listening, or any who ever get this sent to them, do make sure you jump over to truthbombmarketing.com/money summit, because I know that I have so much to learn, and I know some of the women that are the other presenters on this summit, myself included, and I already am inspired to. I just can't wait. I know I'm going to be overwhelmed with knowledge and information, and probably need to watch out for the analysis paralysis and take action. You're right, on the chapters that speak to me most. But apart from that, how can folks find you, follow you, share about your podcast, all the things?
Yeah, so we do have a podcast called Did She Really Say That? That is for our female businesses. So we bring women on, and there's a variety. You will hear a lot of different ways women build businesses, probably some shocking, but definitely some around health. I think that's a big key for this one. You guys can find me on social media. So Truth Bomb Marketing everywhere. Literally like YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find us everywhere for just YouTube for Truth Bomb Marketing. And then me personally, you can either find me by Chef Katrina, like Erin said, that's what I kind of been going by for the last 15 years. But if you're looking for me on LinkedIn, if you guys see my name here on the podcast or what Erin mentions in her show notes, Katrina van Oudheusden, you can absolutely connect with me there also.
Well, thank you, Katrina. This was so inspiring, educational, mind-blowing, fun. I really, really enjoyed having you as I knew I would.
This was fun. I'm glad I got to be here with your audience. Hopefully there's some things that are tinkling in the back of your brain, because here's what I know about real estate agents and this industry in general. You guys are the heartbeats of communities, and I'm grateful for each and every single one of you that buy, sell, help broker real estate, commercial real estate at every level. You are literally the backbone of our economy, and without you, we wouldn't be doing what we do. And so I just want to first off acknowledge and thank you for being here and listening, because you are an intricate part of society as a whole and the economy as a whole, even for small businesses. So keep doing what you do, believe in yourself, and just know that you're making a difference.
I love it so much. And before you hop off, my friends, again, if you found something that's got your wheels turning a little bit, do your friends a favor and share this episode. And if you haven't yet left the review, I'm taking this podcasting class and it talks about the power of reviews. And I'm like, somehow this podcast is the top 1.5% of real estate podcasts globally. I've been doing it for 7 years, but I only have like 110 reviews. What is up with that, Katrina?
So give them a thumbs up. First thing you're gonna have to do is support each other, right? As somebody that's listening to this, support the people that are putting this content out here. So give them a thumbs up, give them a review, give them like a high five for this one, and definitely give them, say something nice, even if it's just like, loved this episode. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but those reviews help us reach more individuals and make a difference for somebody else that needs to hear this also. So if you're listening, someone else needs to hear this. Those reviews just help us continue sharing and making a difference in the world.
Look at you go. I should just have you close out all my episodes here. Okay, my friends, I love you as always. And I will see you next time. And make sure to leave that review so we can keep attracting amazing guests like Katrina and help this content get found so more people can build a life you don't need a vacation from. I love you. I love you. I love you. I'll see you next time.